Well, Kipruto Arab Kirwa as well. There you bang on time.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Green is showing up as well. Right, so he's been beaten to the punch by Martin Olo. But let's see what is fresh off the press this morning. As you can see it, if we may just beam it full so that we can go full steam ahead. This is what you're waking up to on the front page of the Standard today. Attack questions as TSC withdraws 17 school teachers. This is a backlash, a swift action by the teacher's employer, ostensibly to signal its zero tolerance for violence by moving 17 tutors from a Kakamega school where a parent or parents were attacked. Parents attacked teachers over poor KCSE results has inadvertently created a new kind of suffering for students caught up in the crossfire. And you have the story on page 5 of the Standard this morning. 17 teachers have indeed been transferred from Isongo Secondary School. The issue to do with their replacement and how long it will take lies fully with the Teacher Service Commission. This is what Helen Nyang'ao, Kakamega County Education Director, said. And of course, that is not a picture there. That is the Teacher Service Commission CEO, Nancy Macharia, in a past function. You can follow the story inside page 5. We'll run you by that particular story as well. And we have still on the front page of the Standard, homicide detectives dropped in probe of Nakuru doctor's death. Ruto seeks to repair relations with neighbors. President Ruto will today seek to steady Kenya's strained relationships with our neighbors when he meets regional leaders, including Uganda President Yoweri Museveni, on sidelines of 2 meetings in Kampala. Remember, today is a day also where we have that IGAD summit that is trying to bring a happy medium between or with the Sudan crisis. And this is also where, on the sidelines, the president will seek to mend fences with our neighbors. You have a story tucked away on page 7 of the Standard today. Why Rigathi beat an about turn on going after judge. Deputy President says he will not proceed to petition for judge's removal to give a chance to talks between the president and the JSC. You have a story continuing on page 6 of the Standard today. 30 years later, remembering Jaramogi Oginga. This is on page 4. 30 years later, remembering Jaramogi Oginga. Cost of living, tighten your belt, says IMF. Tighten your belt. So we've tightened our belt, but we need to maybe plug another hole there to go a notch higher so that it could be tighter. And this is, of course, as I've mentioned, with the loan that was disbursed yesterday, that is on Wednesday, $941 million, but it is coming with, of course, some ramifications or some also some stringent rules that we need to follow or requirements, so to speak. We have a story tucked on page 22 of the Standard today. Senegal versus Cameroon, which lions will roar? That is a probing question there. Sport, or the sports pages of the Standard today is where they're all splashed. 34, 35, and 36 of the Standard is where you can follow this story. Say my name, all right? Stories behind celebs, stage names. Say my name, right? That could be maybe picked up from that particular song. And every Friday, you have the Standard, which, or with the Pulse magazine that comes in with the Pulse magazine for all your entertainment, for all the young at heart and the young ones as well. You can get all the celebrity gossip inside the Pulse magazine. And of course, the entertainment industry, just getting the current state of play of what is happening in there. You can grab a copy of the Standard where it comes in handy for you every Friday. Let's see what the Daily Nation is holding for us. IMF's beat appeal for taxpayers. Economy, revenue performance has remained low despite the enhanced tax measures. No respite. Kenyans are set for another season of more tax paying as the government starts implementing International Monetary Fund-backed revenue measures that are expected to yield an additional 806 billion shillings over the next 3 years. This comes at a time of elevated inflation and subdued economic activity, which have made it hard for the Kenya Kwanza administration to bring in new taxes and levies without opposition. You can follow the story on page 7 of the Daily Nation there, and you can see International Monetary Fund Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva. And why Ruto Raila Foods threatened bombers report. A new round of heightened political feuding between President William Ruto and opposition leader Raila Odinga is threatening the smooth implementation of the National Dialogue Committee's recommendations. President Ruto recently met officials of a faction of Jubilee, an Azimio affiliate party, directly going against one of the committee's recommendations on a stop to interference with rival parties. The story continues on page 4 of the Daily Nation this morning. Outrage as Supreme Court blacklist, I should say, top lawyer over quote-unquote attacks. Apex Court announces an indefinite ban on senior counsel Abi Nasir and his law firm or any person acting on his instructions from appearing before it. And this story continues on page 10, and we'll pick also the legal mind of the head of the department, Daystar University, Dr. Martin Olo, to tell us how unconstitutional this is, or is it constitutional, or is it within, of course, the parameters of what the Constitution has. This is the Daily Nation. Court of Appeal to rule on rollout of a new health plan today. That is a story that you want to follow on page 7 of the Daily Nation. County is set to wait for a bit longer for 272 billion shillings transfers of resources to take time. This is what PS is saying. You can follow the story on the back page of the Daily Nation. County is set to wait a bit longer for 272 billion shillings transfer of resources to take time. The story continues on the back page of the Daily Nation. Exposed. The big ethnic disparity in government jobs has been exposed here on the front page of the Star on Insight. Audit: Kikuyu and Kalenjin are grossly overrepresented. Disparity cut across promotions, training, share of board positions, internships. The story continues on page 4 and 5 of the Star this morning, and it has been tabulated here for you as well. Looking at this table here, ethnic composition in public service. This is drawn from the Public Service Commission, and you can see ethnicity. Going by the 2019 census population, Kikuyu were leading the particular census with 8,148,668, also followed by Kalenjin 6,358,113. We have Luo as well, 5,066,966. We have Luhya, 6,823,842. Kenyan Somali, 2,780,502. Mijikenda, 2,488,619. Meru, 1,975,000. We have 869 there. Turkana. I want to be able to read all this, but you can see the post as well. Given the population of the Kikuyus there, in post currently, we have 52,841 in the civil service, followed by Kalenjin, 43,407, and then followed by Luo, 29,227, and followed also by Luhya, 29,951. That is about 11.8%, 20.5% led by the Kikuyu tribe there. And we have bottom, Kenyan American, 596, Dahalo, 575, Dasenach, 19,337. We have Walwana. That is the population, I should say, in 2019. But Kenyan American, there is no one actually who is in government right now. Dahalo, none. We have Dasenach, at least in post, we have 27. Walwana, 11. We have Wayu, also, 3. The population is 3,761. Sakuye, the population is 27,006. We have 8 in government. Orma, 158,993. That is a population. 339 have been absorbed in government. We have Nubi, 21,319. 92 now are working in government. And Consul, we have 1,299. And we have 2 in government currently, going by the Public Service Commission, of course, report there on the disparity in the government jobs. Well, I thought maybe Public Service Commission is the one who is supposed to be streamlining this, and them not coming up with these reports. I wonder when it comes to appointments, if they take cognizance of this as well. But I'll leave it for my panelists who they will be able to put this into perspective. Charlene Ruto appointed blood envoy. Health Cabinet Secretary Susan Namukicha has appointed Charlene Ruto as Kenya blood ambassador. Charlene is the daughter of President William Ruto Nakumicha, in a letter dated December 14, 2023, acknowledged Charlene's contribution in blood donation. And you can follow the story inside the Star this morning. Supreme Court, Bam's lawyer, Abin Nasir, is another story that you want to follow so inside the Star. We have also Siasa Magazine coming in handy for you every Friday. Ruto versus Koome, just putting into perspective the current spot that we have on the scuttlebutt that is ongoing between the judiciary and the executive. Ushuru zaidi waja. That is what Taifa Leo is holding this morning. IMF yashinikiza serikali kuanza kutekeleza mipango ya kuongeza mapato kwa wakati mmoja kuanzia sasa. Shirika la fedha ulimwenguni IMF laidhinisha mkopo mwingine wa mabilioni kwa Kenya, huku likihimiza serikali ikaze kamba katika harakati zake za ukusanyaji wa ushuru. You can follow the story on page 2 of the Taifa Leo this morning. Kivumbi, Senegal, Cameroon wakipimana nguvu AFCON leo, and that story is on page 20. I wonder which team Martin Oloni is supporting, Cameroon or Senegal, Barack Muluka as well, and the Green Thinking Action Party leader, Dr. Isaac Kalua. We wonder if they will have a green ball there. Isaac Kalua, good to see you.
Green ball and not there.
Your team was eliminated?
Yes, in the preliminaries. Tanzania.
Harambee Stars.
Yes, it was eliminated before even now. We are talking about the teams that are there, that were not there.
No, it was not in the fixture of this AFCON.
That is where it must begin. Why was your team eliminated? It is because you never worked on AFC Leopards. You never made sure that the AFC can be, because that is where you support it, and then it gets to the next level. But
my team is Harambee Stars.
and it lost.
And it lost. So those are observers. Martin will tell you that where we come from. They say when you say those are our animals, you must be able to point out
Which one is
yours among them.
All right. Today's AFCON. I mean today's tournament. Cameroon, Senegal. Where are you putting a bet, Martin Olo?
Both are very good teams, by the way. And my only problem with this AFCON is that our good players who do so well out there don't give it their all. So when they come back, they just are either avoiding injuries or they're just not playing it out.
It's very important.
It's important, but you see, that is because of their personal gain, which is okay because they make money out there. But when they put on national colors, they now begin to be lackluster, and they're not serious. So
is the nation serious?
I'm talking about Cameroon and
yes, is the nation serious?
The nation is. You see, the point is that we need to work on both ends. They need to be serious, and the nation needs to be serious, so that we can have some.
Which one comes first?
No, the fact is that there are talent out there, which means that when we host African continent, they need to showcase that talent and give us their best.
Martin,
but they seem to be having problems with only their pockets, not necessarily patriotism.
Knows about something called risk and risk mitigation.
Yes, yeah,
and the level of risk.
So you are saying that when you play for Africa, it's risky.
What it would mean if that fellow were to break his leg, whether the country would.
No, we can afford.
So you need to make up your mind whether
Senegal may win.
When it comes to May, either side may win.
Yeah, it is true. Then Senegal is winning.
Senegal is winning.
Yeah.
So you better choose if you want to really play in the shallows or in the deep end.
Yes.
Right. So you look where your bread is buttered.
Say may win. I'm not putting any in your mind.
I would like them to say will win.
Yes.
Will win.
Shall win.
Shall win.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, this is what we have there in Taifa Leo. I'd show you also the Business Daily. What is holding for us? Treasury admits deal with Gulf oil farms a flop. Right. So finally, the truth is coming out regarding the G2G that everyone was talking about, and the government was stoutly defending it, saying no losses has been realized. But here we are. It's a big flop, guys. It's a big flop. Concerns of forex market distortions, December exit plan revealed. And it says more pain as lender prescribes additional 806 billion shillings taxes, right? And we have also 110 billion shillings loan eases Ruto Eurobond pressure. Kenya gains unprecedented access to IMF's exceptional window. And CBK buys dollars to build foreign exchange reserves. This is inside the IMF report, and of course also where this Gulf oil farm deal also is deemed to be a big flop. You can follow the story inside the Business Daily this morning. Billionaire Balubai takes 1.29% stake in Cooperative Bank. Billionaire investor Balubai Patel has taken 1.29% stake in Cooperative Bank of Kenya after buying an additional 20.5 million shares that were valued at 232 million shillings at Wednesday's market close. You can follow the story on page 2 of the Business Daily this morning. Also, 4.4 billion shillings released for students' loan scholarship. The school tranches of state financing towards students' scholarships and loans in public universities under the new higher education funding model has been released. Regulator warns Airtel Telecom of poor quality services. The Communications Authority of Kenya has issued warning notices to Airtel and Telecom Kenya for non-compliance with the quality of service standards offered to consumers on their mobile telephony network. And manufacturers raise prices by 9% amid rising costs. Manufacturers raised the prices of their goods by an average of 9.1% in the year to December 2023 as they passed on to consumers the higher cost of doing business in the country. Follow the story on page 14 of the Business Daily. Let's cross over to Uganda, where IGG raided Government Investment Authority. Mismanagement here. Officials from the inspectorates are said to have swarmed into the offices of Uganda Investment Authority to investigate claims that a group of staff were tampering with documents that are key in an ongoing probe into the mismanagement of the agency. You have a story on page 4 of the Daily Monitor. Cecilia Ogwal, Lioness of Lango, goes to rest. 1946 to 2024, with her distinct sharp voice, Cecilia Barbara, a team Ogwal, all friends and foes in equal measure. In her element, Ogwal cut a respectable figure as an opposition politician who remained true to her word and zeal. She goes to the grave as one of the country's longest-serving legislators and will be remembered for vibrant political personas spanning 3 decades. You can read her story inside the Daily Monitor. And of course, our condolences and our deepest sympathy for the family right now there in Uganda, as plans to return the body of Dokolo district woman, Member of Parliament Cecilia Barbara Atim Ogwal from India are underway, according to Speaker Anita Among. You can follow the story on page 2 and 3 of the Daily Monitor, where you have her tribute. Also, remember the scoop is inside the Daily Monitor as well. You can grab a copy for yourself to get all the entertainment you need. It says it's deep. Let's see what is happening in Tanzania. PCCB speaks out on SAP. That is 22 million shillings fine, $222 million fine. 10 days after German software firm SAP was hit with $222 million fine in the U.S. for bribing government officials in Africa, including Tanzania. The Prevention and Combating of Corruption Bureau said the country was making a follow-up. You can follow the story on page 2. Sugar crisis to ease in next few days, happening in Tanzania. Ethiopia ex-PM offers to revive Arusha flour farms. That story continues also inside The Citizen if you're waking up in Tanzania this morning. Tanzania to have lowest inflation in East Africa. That is according to a report there. Tanzania to have lowest inflation in East Africa. What are they doing that we're not? Maybe we should learn from them as well. You can grab a copy of The Citizen to get all the wiser as far as that is concerned. Let's see what is happening in Rwanda. Starting in Rwanda through eyes of international scholars. Rwanda has over 40 higher education institutions, including globally recognized universities. You can follow the story on page 4 and 5 of the New Times. And Rwandan referee Owikunda makes AFCON debut in Clash of Guinness. And you can see him in action here. Read all about it on page 16 of New Times. If you're waking up in Rwanda this morning, and electronic land titles helping to check fraud. That is according to officials there. Top 5 global threats to beware of beyond 2024. That story continues on page 3. Where are Rwanda's hot springs? Another question there on page 8 of the New Times. China Daily. People benefit from optimized border policies is another story that you want to follow inside China Daily this morning. And oral accounts of 2012 terror attack unveiled. All that also is inside the China Daily this morning. Small yet smart to be highlight of that is bridge and roads initiatives next decade. All that inside the China Daily this morning. And the East African this week is holding this splash season of anime. Things are falling apart in EAC. Burundi shut its border with Rwanda in spite of rebel attacks, just as DRC did over M23. Meanwhile, Somalia beats drums of war in port row with Addis as Kenya and Uganda square off at regional court over oil imports. And as I've mentioned, you've seen there will be talks on the sidelines with President Ruto and also our counterparts in East Africa regarding our fossil relationships or relations lately, I should say. You can read all about it on page 5 of the East African this morning. And the Times, Rwanda revolt withers away. And we have been knowing this story of the asylum. Brave man among 11 Tories to vote against migration bill. Poll shows support for party at lowest level since trust. And you can follow the story on page 2. This is the latest as far as the Times are concerned. Rwanda revolt withers away. This is the Times. Editorial cartoon. Today's editorial cartoon, of course, in the Star is all about dialogue. On the other side, we have dialogue between the government and the opposition. And we have the National Dialogue Committee. And now there is another looming dialogue between the executive and the judiciary. It seems we are a talking nation, right? This is what Ozone has depicted here. We shall also run you by the stories here. But let me just begin with Martin Olo. What do you think about the dialogue? We are always a talking nation. We're on a BBI. After BBI, of course, we come now to what we've been having, the NDC. Now it's going to be now the executive and the judiciary. They say, no, it's not negotiations, it's dialogue. We have to be also very apropos with the terminology that we're using at the end of the day.
Debal, let me begin by saying that, first of all, a very good morning, especially to my colleagues. I haven't seen Barack for a while, and since last year. And Mr. Green hasn't been greening. It's been raining around, so he disappeared. But that's good. So back to the issue of dialogue. And Debal, there's nothing wrong with dialogue. There is nothing wrong with people sitting and talking, just like we're here in this studio talking. And the issue about the dialogue between the executive and the judiciary only raises issues because of how and the manner in which it's being touted. So I believe that both in terms of the holding of the office and in terms of the responsibilities that the chief executive of the state, the president has, and the chief justice have, they should be picking phone calls very often and making calls on matters, governance matters, Kenya matters, development. No problem. What we are seeing, which from a legal perspective or a constitutional perspective, we have an issue with, you can't have a situation where, because the executive has made allegations against the judiciary, you call for dialogue, because the nature of those allegations are very specific. The president has said there's corruption in the judiciary. Because the president has called out the judiciary and said it's corruption, there are only two things that can happen. Get the petitions or get the details, place them before the Judicial Service Commission, and then let investigations happen. So we should not have a dialogue that is going to discuss how not to or how to. The issues have been raised. Go ahead and investigate, or go ahead and challenge them. And then when you're looking at the opportunities between the chief executive of the state, the president and the judiciary, or the executive and the judiciary, the Attorney General is a member of the Judicial Service Commission. In that respect, the Attorney General communicates, conveys any concerns or any issues from the executive that should be conveyed at that point. The state also, the president has two appointees in the judicial system. So there are enough people in the Judicial Service Commission that can express or can actually, bring about any issues that the state has or the executive has. That said, the spat between the president and the Chief Justice, or indeed any attempt to say that there is corruption, should be well thought out, because the president is also on the other side, the person who initiates a tribunal in the event that there is need to investigate a judge. So he must hold back his opinion. He's entitled to his personal opinion, but he's also the president and the head of the state, so he must hold back because he has the instruments of power, he has the constitutional mandate to set up a tribunal, and that tribunal's report comes back to him for implementation.
Right.
So he does have his room.
Right,
and he should not be the one telling us things that have not been investigated.
Why then should we be having a dialogue over matters which are very succinct and clear in the Constitution?
Thank you. I take judicial guidance from yourself when you said that the idiom that is being used is very important. What we are seeing so far is bickering. It is squabbling. We cannot talk about dialogue, and we can talk about people who are saying, let us come together to see how to end this bickering. As Dr. Olo correctly observes, if I may interpret what he's saying, we are not in a crisis, an institutional or constitutional crisis. That a distinction must be made between individuals who work within the judiciary and the judiciary as an entity. Is it possible that the judiciary as an institution has taken a decision that it is going to be corrupt? And how do we deal with that institutional decision by the judiciary if it has said it is going to be corrupt? The executive as an institution represented by the presidency seems to have taken a decision that it is not going to obey certain court orders, that it is going to cherry pick, it's going to have its own weighing scales of justice, and when it determines that this is just, this is the correct decision, it is not corrupt, we are going to obey it. And it would appear that the weighing scales are scales that determine whether the executive has had its way, and if it hasn't, then it must be seen as being corrupt. Now that is a very dangerous zone to go into. And therefore, when we talk about dialogue, and Dibala Inea, you are the one who puts here this document, a very important one, the Constitution. It says here at Article 161 that in the exercise of judicial authority, the judiciary, as constituted by Article 161, shall be subject only to this Constitution and the law, and shall not be subject to the control or direction of any other person or authority. Based on that and on the need to protect the Constitution, which all these people who are talking about the possibility that they could have dialogue have taken a sacrosanct oath to protect. I think this talk about talks between the executive and the judiciary should cease. The executive is represented in the Judicial Service Commission, where these things should be processed. And the voice and position of the executive can be heard within that forum through the Attorney General, I think again as Dr. Law observes, and through other appointees whom His Excellency the President has appointed on behalf of the public to sit inside there. The judiciary is represented by the Chief Justice, who is, of course, the president of the Supreme Court and the chair of the Judicial Service Commission. It is also true that we have got LSK represented there. And so the institutions are there. The things which are happening should essentially be testing the pillars of the Constitution. And the pillars of the Constitution have, of course, been tested for quite some time, beginning, in my view, with the 2017 presidential election, where we saw that it was possible to nullify a presidential election and the country would go on. That the BBI tested the pillars, that the recent petition again by Azmio once again tested the pillars of the Constitution. This is another test, and the sanctity of the Constitution and the law is going to be determined by whether or not the so-called talks do take place. And I submit that the country does not need that dialogue between the executive and the judiciary. It's a bad omen.
It's a bad omen, it's uncalled for, but it flies in the face of what we can hear Dr. Lowe saying, that a dialogue is expected, that any persons from the executive, they can call the judiciary, but you are actually laying it, that is a proper channel that has been established by the Constitution. On matters regarding the affairs of the judiciary, we have representation at the JSC. If I had it wrong, or I had it right, is that what you're saying? That dialogue is a healthy thing, but we expect calls to be made.
Except that we do not need a structured dialogue between the executive and the judiciary. But I'm saying between the president and the chief justice, I'm sure they make phone calls to each other. They are in conversations, they are in discussions about national issues. Not about, but it can also be about the performance of the judiciary, because the president is also free to say, hey.
But it will be the purpose of why we have representation at the TSC.
What we are saying is, again, maybe so that we don't misrepresent what Dr. Muluka is saying, is that there is a structured way in which any decision or any concerns from executive can be processed in the manner in which we are saying. Because you see, if we are talking about corruption or talking about ills, the body that should be concerned with that is the JSC, in which the executive is represented. That we have said. Anything else about whether the president and the chief justice can talk, can call each other, that we are saying is normal and should happen. But the kind of dialogue we are seeing people asking for is what Barack is saying is a red herring. It's not necessary. Because, and in my view, if you happen to have that dialogue and you're calling the president, the judiciary is going to State House, it's likely to be inimical. It's likely to be against good order. It's likely to be about undermining the independence of the judiciary. Because if you come from there and put even any action that says, now we are doing this, that is not how the Constitution contemplates.
So the president is out of order?
Out of order.
Is out of order. Let's hear from Dr. Kalua. Gwen?
Thank you for having me. And I sincerely appreciate the deep thoughts that my colleagues have already presented. I'm a believer of engagement. In my own definition, engagement is a term that needs to be deeper, higher, wider than just dialogue. The three arms of government are very important, ensuring that the nation is brought together, the issues of the common man are dealt with. We have very important issues that need leadership, which can never happen until and unless there is proper engagement between these institutions. Engagement here, as I said, is deeper, wider, and it takes the heart of the common mwananchi to a position that you understand you are not there just for yourself and dealing with what you just have to imagine is important to you. What do I mean? The current scenario as it is, when you have mwananchi at heart, you will never destroy a channel of engagement Because talking about the national dialogue that has been happening in Bomas, how will it happen if the president is not engaged with the leader of opposition? These two parties, or even three in that matter, because it's a judicial process, they have to be in a talking condition, in a very deliberate approach that is going to take the country to the next level. Because you just asked, what is the difference? What is Tanzania doing that we are not doing? They are speaking in one voice. They are engaged. When there is an issue, they are dealing with it as a unit, as a country. And we need to look at that as a very important approach. The altercations that we have been seeing are very unhealthy and may lead to a situation that is not stabilizing this country. A country is like a family. A family has got relatives who live away, who want to invest, who want to do things, and therefore in the family there are investors in this situation of a country. There are words that you will say that a relative will never come next to you. There is a house that will have no water and your relatives will never come to sleep over because they can't shower, and there is no food and there is trouble in that home. We need to take Kenya as a family and start thinking, what is this God-given responsibility? You are not just a leader because of your own. You are placed there by God. And all your faculties need to be proper. Does the president have the intention not to lead the country in a good way? No. I believe he has a very good intention. And I believe he wants to succeed. And I believe he wants to have space. Are some statements wrong in the way that he has placed them? Yes, because of perception. What people perceive of what you say is very important. Is every person in his government working in the best way possible, and therefore he could be straining to achieve what he wants to do? I believe yes. And it could be an opportunity to restructure the government, because when he has an opportunity of having people who are supportive to him and the country, and having what is important in the country with the situation that we have as a country, then you need to have the right people leading and working with you. There are people in this government, you don't need to strain to realize actually they are not working and they are not supporting the president at all. And this is the time to deal with it. There are people who are doing an excellent job. There are people who are well advised, even by my brother here, because these are people who are working with other friends and people and doing the right thing. They're there. Is something wrong in the judiciary? Yes. Is something right in the judiciary? Yes. We have about 9,716 members of staff, including Kadis. We have 348 judges. We have 700 numbers of judicial staff. Are they all good? Do files disappear from the courts? Yes, they do. Is it really necessary to make a blanket condemnation? No. Is it also right that as a president, you want to clear some space and therefore you want to just scare away whatever that cannot be dealt in another way? Yes. Is it also right to do diversionary tactics so that you can also get other opportunities? Yes. Would you want to have absolute power? Yes, if it can, but law does not allow some of these things to happen. A balance of all these things is what I am calling engagement.
Barak seems to be a bit antsy with what he's saying. I can see him.
I'll take it right from where Dr. Kadua leaves it. Balance. Balance is what the good doctor calls engagement. This balance was defined in the 18th century, perhaps even 17th century, by a French philosopher called Montesquieu. Montesquieu, who is associated with the doctrine of separation of powers. the principle of checks and balances. And we have already engaged in that dialogue. Dr. Kalua knows, Martin Olo here also knows that I have supported this government. I support this government. Perhaps among the three of us here, I have supported and I support this government more than any other person around. But there are certain things about which we must remain marble constant when we are talking about things that would tend to destroy the institutions that we have put in place so that we govern ourselves responsibly. And they include things like everyone keeping in their lane. We have had this dialogue, and that dialogue is enshrined in the Constitution of Kenya. That is why when Raila Odinga loses the presidential election like he lost in 2022, and the matter goes before the Supreme Court, Raila Odinga may leave that space grumbling and talking about how it is unfair, it is unjust, but he has got to accept it because we have had that dialogue. Now, if we're going to say that we're going to have a dialogue between the executive and the judiciary, because the executive is threatening not to obey certain court orders, it is possible that we could be opening up the Pandora box, that those who have accepted certain court orders from the past can also say, echoing Uhuru Kenyatta, that let us revisit. They can also say that in fact you are right, the judiciary is corrupt, and that in September 2022 the judiciary reached a corrupt decision. And because it reached a corrupt decision and all of us now have established consensus that the judiciary is corrupt, we in fact are revisiting the presidential election matter, and we are not recognizing the president, and that therefore we are setting ourselves up as an alternative power. Now that is exactly what the Honorable Chief Justice means when he says that you are going to take the country into anarchy, because everyone is going to cherry pick and to determine for themselves which orders they are going to obey and which orders they will not. And when they are unhappy, they will call for dialogue between yourselves. The sovereign authority of the country resides with the people, and the people obey laws only to the extent that everyone else is being seen to be obeying the laws. If and when they don't do that, we will overrun the institution called government. That's why you have seen that in history there have been such things as popular uprisings, and popular uprisings will overrun any police force, they will overrun any military, they will overrun any state house. We cannot go into that space. And if there are good people watching and listening, and they love this country, and they love President William Ruto, they love Mr. Raila Odinga, they love this nation called Kenya, then they should speak the truth, speak with candor, and say that this thing is bad, because it is bad.
Right, I'm talking of revisiting. We had also the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, saying he will revisit his case, and he failed to file a petition for the removal of a High Court judge from office, as earlier promised. Gachagua had threatened to personally visit the Chief Justice Martha Koome and file his complaint against the said judge on Thursday at 2:30 p.m. According to the Deputy President, the move has been prompted by the need to allow for dialogue between the executive and the judiciary on the conduct of the judicial officers. And as KTN's political affairs reporter Daniel Karaoke reports, Gachagua has alleged that the judicial officer had unceremoniously declared his fortune as proceeds of crime, a move he claimed was meant to taint his image.
With the executive Accusing some judiciary officials of corruption, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua had vowed to present a petition to the Chief Justice Martha Koome against a certain judge. That meeting with the CJ was to take place Thursday.
Amechallenge sisi tutoe ushahidi. I will lead by example. On Thursday, this coming week at 2:15, I'll personally present a petition before Lady Chief Justice Martha Koome.
His threat came to a naught, with the DP failing to do so. In a statement issued on Thursday, the Deputy President's office said the move had been prompted by Chief Justice Martha Koome's statement inviting dialogue on the critical issue of accountability in the judiciary, which President William Ruto has embraced. The statement reads in part, "In this regard, the Deputy President will not proceed with the matter of the petition for now." End of quote. Gachagua had vowed to ensure the removal of the judge, claiming the judge denied him the opportunity to be heard and ruled against Gachagua's application to have his account unfrozen by the Assets Recovery Agency.
We made an application to cross-examine the investigator akakataa kwa sababu anajua there is no case. Na evidence tuko nayo vile ilifanyika. So 2:15 on Thursday, my lawyers are preparing, mimi mwenyewe, because he has challenged us.
This is not the first time a politician has dared to table evidence of some accusations to institutions and backtracked on the same, with the politicians accused of politicizing serious issues. In this case, the war between executive and the judiciary.
We have written, and I believe His Excellency is going to give us an appointment, and we are ready to go anytime we are called.
Mimi nataka nimwambie Madam Chief Justice, mimi niko tayari. Mkutano kati ya executive, judiciary, legislature.
Up to now, it is not clear how the yet to be held Judiciary-Executive meeting will be held, where and who will attend, whereas the President has welcomed the invitation for the meeting. Opposition leaders as well as the Law Society of Kenya have punched holes into the said meeting, saying it would erode the independence of the judiciary. Although President Ruto had vowed to fight alleged corrupt judicial officers, it is still not known how he would go about it, as the removal of a judge can only be done through a tribunal set up by the Judicial Service Commission. Daniel Kariuki, KTN News, Nairobi.
Staying with judicial matters, the Supreme Court has barred senior counsel Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi and his associates or associate of his law firm from making submissions before the court. In a statement issued on Thursday, the court said the lawyer had relentlessly and unabashedly, I should say, conducted a campaign in the broadcast, print and social media aimed at scandalizing, ridiculing and outrightly denigrating the apex court. The statement adds that Ahmed Nasir, through social media posts, media interviews and written, of course, had accused of the court of acts of corruption, incompetence and outright bribery. The statement further says, quote unquote, it was unattainable that the lawyer will seek justice in the very institution and before the very judges whose reputation and integrity he had never tired of assaulting. However, in a quick rejoinder, the lawyer seemed to have taken pride in the decision, terming it as a badge of honor. He went ahead to label the Supreme Court as being corrupt. All right, Martin Olo, so do we term this, how do we term it, the banning of Ahmed Nasir by the Supreme Court. Is it an avenue? Do you take it? It is his right to appear before any court in this country. But now banning him, what does it really portend? We've seen some of the lawyers also taking to the tweets and saying it is unconstitutional. Is it?
There are issues to think about, but I want to characterize what we are seeing as both a constitutional but also an administrative action. But I also want to add, it's also a political action. The judiciary, especially the Supreme Court at this stage, is very alive to the fact that at any one given time, there could be a possibility of saying they are corrupt, and therefore, or rather there's been a possibility of being told they are corrupt, and therefore even a tribunal can be appointed. Now, what kind of tribunal is likely to be appointed? Because you've seen the tweets or the whatever you call the X between the president and Ahmed Nasir about both of them agreeing there's corruption. So which is the easier target? Hit Ahmed Nasir first. Why? He's a lawyer, he's an advocate. There is certain etiquette and basic conduct that he needs to be subjected to. I'm an officer of the court. Mm-hmm. I have issues with the court. Indeed, I have sometimes lost cases I believe I should not have lost. But I understand that whether I like it or not, I have an opportunity to go to the Court of Appeal. I have appeared before the Supreme Court. There are some decisions I've made which I may not have liked. But that is not enough for me to malign the court, to make allegations, to actually taint their reputation. As an advocate, there is a decorum, a level of decorum that is required of me. So what we are seeing with Ahmed Nasir, the political part of it is, okay, so you are in cahoots with other non-professionals to attack the court, and yet you are an officer of the court. We are calling you to order. Mm-hmm. Secondly, there are aspects of contempt which can be adjudged either through due process or through summary action by the judiciary. If you're in contempt, you can be, like you saw that guy who flew to go and hit the judge in one of those, I think it was in the US. That's contempt of the court in the face of it. That is a decision you can take on the spot. But you can also take contempt of the court in the manner in which the judiciary is acting on an officer, especially if they are insulting, they are making unsavory remarks about the court, yet they are officers of the court. You can call them out. What they are doing is to give him, if he doesn't like that decision, an opportunity to make his case. But they have also made a collection of the statements and the tweets that he has been making over the court, which in itself are also not a fair thing. Because if I'm making allegations about the Supreme Court, I should be able to pursue that, place that evidence before the Judicial Service Commission, and so on. Now, Ahmed Nasir himself was one of the first Judicial Service commissioners.
Indeed.
Elected by us as lawyers. And again, it's us who actually removed him from the office. He wanted to be re-elected, we removed him from office. There was Professor Tom Ojenda, who also was in there. And again, when he wanted to be elected, again, as members, we did not elect him. Both of them had different issues. For Professor Ojenda, we said he loved practicing, and yet you don't practice before the judges that you are deciding their issues. So we said the better thing is, please don't practice. If you don't practice, then don't be there. For Ahmed Nasir, he knows. He's actually the commissioner who was there when the Supreme Court judges were appointed. So if they were corrupt, he knows.
He was interrogating them. He was the one who was interviewing with them.
So why did he allow them to come in? So there is some information that he has by virtue of having been a commissioner that he either can use properly to make a case, or he should not use to wage a public war on the judiciary without any basis. So maybe let me say the last one, which is very with a tongue in cheek. Mm-hmm. It is not inconceivable that the next tribunal that the president appoints could have Ahmed Nasser as the chairman of that tribunal against a judge. And so this preemptive